Namaste. Sit comfortably. Begin with eyes open, spine straight. Take a moment to scan the room. And let the eyes settle on an object. Look at this object as if it's the first time seeing it. And then let the eyes go soft. Begin to take in the spatial information that surrounds that object. With the eyes soft, now float into peripheral vision. Become aware visually of the space in the rest of the room. Observe the soundscape in the space that you are in. What sounds are audible to you in this moment? Notice the physical sensation of the seat, clothes, and hair on your skin. The physical sensation and temperature of the breath. And finally, the taste and smell of the breath. As you collect this sensational experiences, now turn everything inside, close the eyes, and go within. Notice the point of contact that brings the mind from the external to the internal, and become aware of the inner landscape of the mind. The breath is smooth. As you observe this inner landscape of the mind, notice where the processing occurs inside the head. And like a scientist taking a reading, notice the vibration in that part of the head. Just watch. Don't try to change anything. No judgment. Just allowing the mind to be where it is and noticing the way it feels in that part of the head. Now slow down the exhalation, heart rate variability breath, smooth and circular. Extended exhale. Go on breathing like this for a few rounds. Keep the attention focused on the breath. And now turn your attention away from the breath. Release any effort and hone back inside the head. Notice how it feels in the place where the mind processes occur. Just observe. Keep the eyes closed, hands relaxed, and chant with me 3 ohms. Take a deep breath in to begin. eyes closed. And again, check in with the mind field. Just notice what's happening inside the head. And when you're ready, you may gently blink open the eyes, look down the tip of the nose, slowly letting light back in. Okay, so here we are. The human brain is absolutely fascinating. Brains emit these electrical signals, and the current of that electricity that fires in the brain is measured in cycles per second, and this is measured by an electroencephalogram or an EEG, maybe you've heard of. So the speed of those electrical impulses are measured and classified into these different brain states. And so we can take a look at these states and see how they parallel our understanding of the different levels of consciousness. And knowing that also during the waking state and the dreaming state, we're missing this conscious awareness. The mind is caught up in some superficial type of activity because in the waking state, we identify who we are based on subconscious programming. So programs that maybe came into place when we were children, we become identified with our environment, with our external environment, which of course is defined by other people, other processes, the environment itself. And so all of this perceived knowing of who we are creates an emotion that becomes our identity. And so when we are practicing Yoga Nidra, I think I mentioned this already, that the goal is to become conscious within the subconscious and within the unconscious states of mind. And so to understand that, we can take a look at these different brain states or brain waves. And here's kind of a basic chart of how we go from deep sleep in the delta brain state. So the delta brain state is this deep, dreamless sleep that also could be accessed in transcendental meditation. We go from delta, and you can see there the cycles per second or hertz for delta is 0.2 to 3 hertz. And then we go from delta into theta. And so the theta state is categorized by, your dream sleep, your REM sleep, these sort of like visionary experiences, meditation and very, very light sleep, right? This is the REM that you travel in and out of throughout the cycles of your sleep cycle. So as we're waking up, so we go from delta to theta and into alpha. And so alpha is sort of like a twilight state between the sleep and the waking state. Okay, so you see there alpha is categorized between 8 to 12 hertz, roughly. And then the beta state, this is our normal waking consciousness. So you see from 12 to 27 is categorized as beta. This is the place where we're able to concentrate and communicate and be alert, and process things. But high beta, so as we get sort of into the higher states of beta, this is categorized as a stressful event, kind of over arousal. And then you see gamma over here. And so gamma is a newly discovered brain wave state. It's showing here as 27 hertz and up. And, there's some discrepancy in precisely which cycles per second numerical value are given to each one as scientists are understanding these states. But gamma is categorized by this sudden insight. Could be, a Kundalini awakening or a moment of ecstasy. Gamma is when you would feel like you're in flow, a flow state, or in the zone. Sometimes athletes will say. So let's break these down one by one. Take a look. Okay. So high beta state. So we'll start here at high beta because remember this is sort of the stress state, right? This is when there's disharmony, extreme stress, incoherence, right? So when the brain is not all firing together at the same time, it's when the body is in a sympathetic response. And remember, our sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight mode. And high beta is critical when we have an emergency situation to be able to, act suddenly, and our whole body comes to the ready. But sustained high beta can inhibit the brain's ability to function properly when it comes to learning, to creating, to dreaming, to problem solving, and to healing. And so, so here you see. So this is a conscious state. It's a state of overwhelm, of stress, when the mind is just sort of hyperactive. Okay, and if we're cueing in Yoga Nidra, then this student is probably going to need some preparatory practices in order to relax into the alpha state more easily. And maybe you're familiar with this. When I first started yoga, yin or any kind of meditation would drive me crazy. So it was very hard for me to sit still. And I found through my journey that if I would practice some really intense form of yoga, like Ashtanga or some strong pranayama technique or something like that, and then try to be still, it was much easier to calm my mind down. So this is an example of someone who's living in this sort of sustained high beta state. The brain is sort of stuck in this emergency mode. And what's happening is there's an over arousal of stress hormones. The attention is shifting rapidly from one thing to the next. And when you're in a high beta brain state, the focus is very narrow. Because it's categorized, it's there. Our brain does this to protect us from some kind of danger. Okay. So going from high beta then to low beta, here you see again, this is a conscious state. This is the place where we're able to concentrate and be attentive, be alert. Okay. Low beta is a healthy brain state. It's a good place to be learning. There's not a perceived sense of threat or danger, and some slight bits of stress can help us and give us energy to navigate through this three-dimensional reality, and perk up the brain, right? So this low beta state is the place that we want to be. High beta is should be minimized ideally, for healing and highest quality of functioning, and healthy amounts of stress, right? Okay, so in beta, we're emotionally stable. As I mentioned, able to concentrate. It's characterized by a heightened sense of alertness, of logic, and critical reasoning. In the beta state, this is also where we are in our analytical mind, and so the voice that's inside of your head, that analytical voice, can become louder and louder and less coherent as the beta brain waves state, as you increase, um, the number of cycles per second, or the hertz, right? So as we go higher in the beta range, that analytical voice becomes louder and more dysfunctional. Okay, the beta state overall, children who are between 8 and 12 years old, are primarily in the beta brainwave state. So then, around 12 years old, the gap between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind begins to close. So most of the subconscious programming is installed before the age of 12. Okay, so moving on then from beta as we go into alpha. So on the border between beta and alpha, sort of between maybe 13 to 15 hertz, uh, the mind is in a very calm and alert state. The awareness starts to shift to an inward focus. In a high alpha state, about 30% more of information can actually be taken in by the brain. So it's a state of inner peace and joy. It's the primary brainwave state in the early stages of meditation. Okay, so you see on the slide here, the hypnagogic is what they call it in psychology. Hypnagogic is what Swami Satyananda calls it. And in the alpha, so here we're moving beyond the conscious mind where the subconscious patterns exist. We can start to see these images, and alpha you can think of as like a trance state. We may start to lose concept of time and place in the external world. And so it's in the alpha state then that we are able to bring information from the unified conscious field, and from our subconscious into our conscious awareness. When we go into the alpha brain state, we begin to lose our grip of our identity, as it relates to that external world and subconscious programming that I was talking about at the beginning of the lecture. So in alpha brainwave state, the brain experiences deep relaxation. Okay, this is where daydreaming occurs, and because about 80% of our sensory stimuli is derived from sight, when we close the eyes, we greatly reduce the amount of information that our nervous system is being inundated by. So going from beta towards sleep, the first thing is we close our eyes and we travel through this alpha brainwave state. Okay, here this state will heighten the imagination, memory, learning, concentration, And the voice here is the voice of our intuition. Okay. This is where more healing can happen. It's a space for creation, for regeneration and restoration. And it's the place where our inner world becomes more real than our outer world. And the brain is predominantly in an alpha state between 5 and 8 years of age. So the analytical mind starts to form in the child to interpret and make conclusions about their life um, at that at the brink of that alpha brainwave period, right? And so children in this age bracket of roughly 5 to 8 years old, um, the imagination is huge, right? Because their inner world is more real than their outer world, so they're able to pretend and play make believe, exceptionally, much more easily. And so this is the alpha state. And so then as we begin to drift off to sleep, then we border between alpha and theta. And here at this border, okay, now we're coming into the subconscious realm, the dream state. Okay, this is the place where visualization, a good place for programming the mind and harnessing the creative power of the mind. That's where we consciously create our reality. And the body here is in very deep states of relaxation. Okay. So that's at the border then between alpha and theta. And as we get into theta, again, this is dream, this is subconscious, right? It's the creative state. Okay. So there's this sort of heightened suggestibility. This is the place that hypnotherapists use to access our subconscious mind. Okay, the body is completely resting and almost asleep, but you're still awake. So it's like you're conscious and you're in your subconscious mind. Okay, so there's no more connection to the external identity, to the conscious mind, to the personality. And you're moving from the neocortex part of the brain to the subconscious parts, which we'll get to in the next video about the brain structure itself. Okay. So in theta, this is the place where we can relieve the stress of our day. Endorphins are released in the theta brain state, and the levels of the hormone cortisol decrease. Okay, this is where we can, in this brain state, it's where we can heal our emotional trauma and experience these sort of mystical experiences of oneness, of connection to that unified consciousness. So theta brain waves will be present in very deep states of meditation, in light sleep, and the REM dream state of the dream cycle. Okay. This is, again, the realm of our subconscious mind. It's known as the twilight state. And it's very, very quickly experienced as we drift off to sleep, in the alpha state, and then when we arise from sleep, from the delta, from the deep sleep. Okay. Here in theta, there will be a deep spiritual connection and oneness with the universe. This is where we'll find the most deep-seated programs in the mind, and the voice here is just silence. Right? Babies or children between 2 years and about 5 or 6 years old are primarily in this theta brain state. So they're very strongly connected to their inner world, And anything that comes into the conscious mind immediately goes to the subconscious. So there's no barrier there at this age, and that's where these subconscious or these conscious ideas just go straight into becoming these functioning programs within the individual. Okay. Then the delta brain state. So this is the state of dreamless sleep, restorative sleep, and the body is completely out, catatonic. So this is the time where the body is healing itself. It's resetting its internal clock. This is when we have essentially exited our body and gone back into the larger conscious field. It's the slowest brain wave, and it can be present in very deep transcendental types of meditation when the person essentially leaves the body and merges with the conscious field. Okay, this is the realm of our unconscious mind, and it's the gateway to the universal mind, okay, characterized by deep healing and regeneration. And babies from birth to about 2 years old are in this delta state. The neocortex, or the analytical mind, is barely functioning at this time. Okay, so all of the information of the environment is being imprinted with very little filter, very little judgment at this age. Okay, gamma brain waves. So this is the most recently discovered brain wave, and it's characterized by a frequency of roughly 37 or 40 hertz and above. And so this is these sort of sudden bursts of insight and high level of information processing. So you see it's connected with the supra-conscious, so that place, that turiya state, that state of beyond the conscious, subconscious, non-conscious mind, when one is connected to that universal consciousness, or Brahman. So Yoga Nidra can allow us to become fully awakened across all of the states of consciousness, and come into this sort of sustained samadhi state, right? So this hyper brain activity then is the arousal that's not caused by stress hormones. So remember, in beta, it's the stress hormones that bring us into that high beta, over-stressed state. But this arousal actually comes from the body. The brain moves into this super conscious, super hyper aware state. And so this arousal can produce emotions like ecstasy, bliss, euphoria. It's a different type of arousal than that high beta state characterized by the cortisol and the other stress hormones. Okay, so gamma we can see as these sudden bursts of enlightenment, a kundalini awakening. This could happen while traveling through the brainwave state in a practice like Yoga Nidra or another type of meditation, where one calms the brain and then has a sudden burst of insight into the field, and it can feel like this hyper arousal within the body, but it's a good feeling of hyper arousal. It's almost as if you can feel every cell in the body, and the body as merging with everything around it. So no separation, no barrier between the physical body and the mind itself, and everything else, right? So there's a dropping then of the ego when one enters this sort of state. Okay, so the journey of Yoga Nidra. So I mentioned that it is a journey through the brainscape, and we'll take a look at how that looks on the anatomical level in the next class. But it's also a journey through the koshas, a journey from the finite to the infinite. And you can see in these diagrams here how the brain waves, how we go from the high beta to the mid beta to the low beta. Um, and then we sort of transcend the analytical mind and enter this alpha state, right? And this is what we're doing. We do it every day when we go to sleep. And then, so when we're doing it in Yoga Nidra, we're doing it and trying to stay conscious through each of these states. Okay. So the purpose then of meditation, of Yoga Nidra, is to get past the analytical mind, because it's the analytical mind that essentially separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind. And to enter into the subconscious mind, we've got to slow down the brain waves from high beta to mid beta to low beta to alpha, right? And so then when we're in Yoga Nidra, our goal then is to expand the window of the alpha brain state. So the alpha brain state is sort of our key here. This is the best place for a practitioner to plant their sankalpa, or their intention, which we'll define more clearly later on. And so normally the alpha state is experienced so very quickly, and especially if we're extremely tired, for example, when we go to sleep, it's sort of just like a blip from our waking into our dreaming and deep sleep state. Okay, so after this, I think um, it'd be good if you'd write a reflection on the meditation that we did. Practice this also on your own, sort of slowing down the brain waves on your own, and jot down some notes of how it feels. Everyone experiences things differently, and so when you are observing like a scientist the state of your mind, you may see movement, or you may feel movement, or there may just be a knowing of a vibration, or a sense of unease. And so I want you to jot down some notes about how you experience each of these brain states. And it's okay if you don't know yet, but I'd like for you to start beginning to pay attention when you are meditating. So when you're coming into a state of meditation, of dharana and dhyana, and you can sort of distinguish, right, between when you transition from dhyana, or from dharana to dhyana, right? Maybe when you're in dharana and your concentration is being pulled somewhere, and then you're making an effort to bring the concentration back, and then when you're in dhyana, because there's this passing of time that just happens, and there's no effort to concentrate anymore. So I want you to just sort of journal about how that process feels. Again, don't worry if theta and delta are not making sense right now, because if you haven't been paying attention when you fall asleep, then, or you fall asleep very quickly, then there may not be any conscious awareness. If you start paying attention in your meditation, and then every night when you go to sleep, see if when you go to sleep, especially if you fall asleep very quickly, if you can notice where that alpha state is, and even maybe some of that theta state. Okay, so start just sort of paying attention to the actual transition from waking to sleeping state. and journal about it. Okay, let's close with an Om. Sit up straight. Namaste.